Welcome back to the channel. Book Challenge Chats, or Reading Challenge Chats, however you want to put it, with me, Book Dragon 09 or Book Dragon 9. I can drop the zero, it doesn't really matter. What we do is I have my reading challenge that I have going for Goodreads for 2022, and my goal is 60 books. I did 60 last year when the goal was 50. So I figured, okay, we'll go for 60 again and see what we can do. So I'm catching up now in reviewing. I didn't review the books last year. I hadn't really thought about doing it, but it would have been a whole bunch of Tolkien stuff then, because that's what a lot of it was. Where right now, so far, it's been all kind of Janet Frame, except for the first video, which was Tolkien's Letters from Father Christmas. So this one is a little bit of difference. It's still Janet Frame, but it's the Pocket Mirror. If I can center it, there you go. It's basically a collection of poems, and I guess maybe even some short stories that maybe go like 4-5 pages. And a lot of the poems in this book, and I'm not a huge fan of poetry. I'd like to be able to read something where I can sort of like form a story in my head. And a lot of times poetry, with all the use of metaphors and similes and just, being very wordy, kind of takes that ability away from me. One of my coping mechanisms within reading is to visualize a story, visualize the events in my head. And a lot of times poetry doesn't really do that for me. She's very descriptive in this book, but I think for a lot of it, it helps knowing some New Zealand background, because at least a lot of the early poems in the book center around New Zealand, especially where she grew up, Dunedin. Dunedin, I should say it slower. But that was her hometown. That was where she grew up, which is just kind of like a little backwoods part of New Zealand, which is now, they're at least very well known because of her. The one that stands out to me the most, and it's more, again, it's more like a story, but because it goes for about 4 or 5 pages and has like dialogue, so there's characters, but yet it's still sort of poetic, is Sunday Drive. It's just showing how we sort of go through our lives. And in earlier books, she sort of showed, like with Owls Do Cry, that, the golden age of our lives, the golden years, aren't really so golden, because the body breaks down and we get weak and frail, and our mind starts to go. And we sort of kind of get that here in Sunday Drive, is, things start so well in the beginning, and then, toward the end, it's like, well, when somebody gets really old and they're not, of their right mind, you can't really communicate with them. Or, as she says, as the toys get close to the sea, you can no longer play with them. So that's probably my standout one. I think just, also another one would be some thoughts on bereavement. Reading somebody's thoughts on bereavement, I think, is interesting, because we all have different ways of bereaving or grieving. There is no one way in which we grieve. There is no process. There is no steps, as they would say. There are no 7 steps on grieving, and that you have to go through them all in order to get through your grief. That's not how it is. We also all take different amounts of time to grieve. We don't grieve the same way. We don't, for some people, they can move on in a matter of days. For some of us, it takes years. Some people never get over the loss. So, that was an interesting read as well. they're all they're all good poems. Some of them, obviously not being from New Zealand myself and not knowing the backdrop except through through her books and her autobiography, it makes it a little tough for me to really, I guess, fully appreciate them, because I don't see what she sees. Um, you know, she tries, but I think unless you can see things through her eyes, or you're at that place, you're there where she's talking about in the poem. It's really hard to fully grasp everything that she's trying to get to you out of it, and you know that's just kind of how a lot of the early poems in this book are. They sort of start spreading out over different topics. It's not all New Zealand because obviously she wrote poetry for a long time. She actually started out that way, and I'm looking for the publishing date on this. This was published in '67. Now, her autobiography, which will be coming up, is filled with poems as well. Poems that didn't make it into this. You know, poems that she loved herself by other poets, um, and also poems that she wrote trying to kind of be like those poets. And in the end, I'm glad she went on her own direction, because we don't need another Keats, or we don't need another uh, we don't need another copy of an author. It's just we need new author. If I want to read Keats, I'll read Keats. It's that simple. Um, but I'm glad that she chose to take her own style and her own backdrop for these poems. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of poetry books and collections, um, but as a poetry collection, it impressed me. It wasn't something like, okay, how many more poems do I have left? How many pages do I have? It's 121 pages. Where am I at, and how many pages do I have? It wasn't like that. It didn't take me very long to get through it anyway. But um, but I appreciated what she was trying to do, and there are a lot of more modern poets where they try to dazzle you with their words and with a flow and rhyme scheme, and that's great and all, but they leave out the things that matter, I think, the most in poetry, which is metaphor, simile. Give me description. Give me description of what you're writing about. Don't just give me words about about whatever. Just words throwing together to make a point. That's what a lot of the new poetry kind of is, or at least the newer poetry that I was familiar with when spoken word started to become popular in recordings and stuff like that in the '90s and early 2000s. You know, that's kind of what it was just doing a flow, almost like I'm doing a song, kind of, but not really giving me anything to envision in my head. And that's kind of what I look for, and Janet does that in this. So 5 stars. If you like poetry, I would recommend it. I'd also probably say read the autobiography as well, because there's a lot of poems in there as well, over the 3 parts of the autobiography. So as always, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate that. Press the subscribe button. That way it lets me know you're interested in more videos about books and what I'm reading and what you might want me to read or whatever. Also hit that notification button. That way when new videos are up, and it also can keep you up to date on when some book giveaways will be coming. All those books that are basically going from the end of the shelf to the ceiling are going to be books that are going to be giveaways at some point very soon. So stay tuned for that. So again, press like, subscribe, the notification button, leave a comment below as well. Let me know what you think. If you've read this, give me your thoughts of it. I'd love to see your thoughts on it. Also you can leave your good Goodreads names, if I could speak, and I can add you and we can see what each other is reading and give each other suggestions, or you can leave suggestions down below in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. So with that, as always, keep YouTube literate, and until next time, I will see you later. Bye bye.